people look at him crazy, like, why don't you just take field goals? Field goals get you beat. They want to score touchdowns. He's going to be aggressive. People might not always like it, but it turned out to be enough today.
The eye here, Henry's sweet spot, right up the gut. Derrick Henry running for the end zone. He's in. Touchdown, Baltimore.
It takes a toll when you're trying to tackle him, and you just can't think the free safety can come from the middle of the field and get this guy down. He's just one of the rare players that the more he gets the ball, the stronger he gets.
Welcome to the NFL on Fox podcast presented by Verizon, the NFL powered by Verizon 5G. I am your host, Dave Helman. We are charging into your feed like Derrick Henry through an undefended A-gap. Felt like that happened a lot on Sunday afternoon in Arlington, Texas. So much to get to. That game included, you heard our guys, Kevin Burkhardt and Tom Brady on the call right there. Baltimore Ravens taking down the Dallas Cowboys, but a loaded week 3. So many fun storylines, so many amazing performances. Backup quarterbacks, plural with an S, multiple of them, putting the team on their back to get big wins on the road, no less. Unbeaten's going down. You got the reigning champs fending off the Falcons on Sunday Night Football. So much to get to. So without further ado, let's just get into it. We call this our Sunday 6. If you're unfamiliar, we got the 6 biggest storylines coming out of week 3. The 6 things we think you just got to know heading into your Monday, heading into week 4. And let's start it off right there. Number 1 overall. How about those Baltimore Ravens? Lot of doom and gloom, lot of concern about whether they could avoid an 0-3 hole. And did they ever? Cowboys make it interesting with a fourth quarter rally. Credit to them. They scored 21 points late in the game. But the Baltimore Ravens jumped out to an early lead on the Cowboys, much like we saw in week 2. This not quite as ugly as what the Cowboys showed in their week 2 loss to the Saints, but equally concerning. The inability to stop the run, getting in a hole early. The Ravens were up 14-3 before you could even blink. And from there, it was always going to be difficult for Dak Prescott to work the Cowboys back. He tried. Credit to him for that. But Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry win the day. Derrick Henry, famously the free agent running back that so many people wanted to see in Dallas, signed with the Baltimore Ravens instead. And Jerry Jones and the Cowboys will say, we couldn't afford it. We weren't looking that way. Maybe having second thoughts in the wake of another loss. They are down to 1-2 on the season. The Ravens, like I said, avoiding that very catastrophic 0-3 hole with a big win. We'll dive further into this. We're going to hear from Tom Brady, for starters, about his player of the game. You can maybe take an educated guess about who that might be. But first, I had a chance to catch up with our guy, Fox Sports reporter Ralph Vacchiano, about the ebbs and flows of what started out as a very dominant performance for Baltimore, bit of a rally by the Dallas Cowboys, but ultimately what turned into an impressive win for the Ravens. All right, Ralph, look, I mean, I'll give the Cowboys the credit of making the fourth quarter interesting. The offense wakes up enough to go touchdown, touchdown, touchdown in the last 10 or so minutes of this game. But to be frank, I already knew Dak Prescott was capable of doing that. Like I've seen the Cowboys do that enough times to where it's nice to know it's in their back pocket. But coming out of this game, even after the rally, it's hard to focus on a whole lot else besides the Baltimore Ravens running for 274 yards, a second straight week where the Cowboys' opponent did whatever they wanted to on the ground.
Exactly. It's the problems that we knew were there, the problems that showed up last week. And anytime you wanted to write it off as a one-off against the Saints, it wasn't, because the same issues popped up that we knew they had. They can't run. They can't stop the run. And, look, they almost made a miraculous comeback, and that was all on Dak Prescott, who, again, like you said, we know how brilliant he is. We know that he's capable of that. And quite frankly, he's the reason why you can still be comfortable that the Cowboys will probably win 10 games this season, because he's capable of winning that many on his own. But their standards obviously are higher. They want to compete against the best teams in the league, which I think the Ravens are one of them. They want to go far in the playoffs. You can't do that if you're going to give up 274 yards on the ground and pick up only 51 yards of offense on your own in the running game. Those are two things you need against the better teams in football, and the Cowboys don't have them in their bag. They have Dak Prescott, and really at the moment, when you look at them, that's pretty much it.
Yeah, I mean, even once again, we were just talking about this before we hopped on. The Dallas running game, once again, failing to get going. Jerry Jones seems a little exasperated with the media for harping on this, but this is another week. And granted, it doesn't help that opponents keep jumping out to these big leads that kind of takes you out of the ability to run the ball. But at the same time, not seeing a ton of spark from the Dallas run game, which is extra obvious when you're seeing New Orleans and Baltimore getting chunk play after chunk play on the ground.
Right. I mean, look, they weren't down 21-0 30 seconds into the game. So they had time to generate a rushing attack, but they have no ability to do that. And you can even see it in shorter spurts. Sometimes you need to pick up tough yards later in the game where you need the run just to keep the team, to the opposing defense, a little bit off balance. They don't have that the way the Ravens do. I'm not saying that, when they're trailing, coming from behind, that they're going to put up 200 rushing yards, but just sustain a little bit to make the defense come in a little bit and maybe open things up for CeeDee Lamb or Jake Ferguson or anybody else on offense. They just don't have that ability. They're very, very one-dimensional. And, I know you know this. It's just silly that Jerry Jones was basically blaming that problem on the media, saying we were sort of overhyping it and creating a narrative when everybody knew all off season long they had to get better at running back. They had to get better in the rushing attack. There were a million running backs, all of them good on the market. They ignored them all and decided to go with an ancient Ezekiel Elliott and Rico Dowdle. And, well, this is the result. They just can't run the ball.
I'm not ready to take a victory lap yet because it is a long, long season. But
True.
a lot of the issues that we had with the Cowboys heading into this season are showing up. I mean, they needed to bolster their run defense. They don't look like they've done it. Some of those veteran additions, Jonathan Phillips already headed to injured reserve this past week. They struggle to run the ball. They've struggled to find a consistent option in the passing game behind CeeDee Lamb, and Jake Ferguson had a nice day on Sunday. And also, shocker of shockers, 2 rookie offensive linemen not playing poorly, but you're seeing them adjust to the NFL in real time. Tyler Guyton had a big holding call in this game that called a major gain back for the Cowboys passing game. So to this point, a whole lot of the stuff that troubled us about Dallas has troubled us through 3 weeks.
Yeah, and that Guyton holding penalty, certainly something a veteran can do, and I think he's played generally well, but you trust rookies in a big spot when you had veterans and you had a good offensive line and you just let it go because you were too stubborn, I guess, to sign Dak Prescott to a contract earlier and give yourself a little more cap flexibility. None of this is a surprise. And again, it's not saying that the Cowboys are a bad team. I certainly expect that, in a few days, they're going to go into the Meadowlands and beat a Giants team that got their first win that I don't think is very good. They're much better than them, but that's not the standard. Beating the Giants isn't the standard. The standard is, can they beat the Baltimore Ravens? And, it gives them a little sense of false hope that they got so close, but they really weren't for most of that game. They needed that frantic comeback at the end because when the game was in its, the first 3 quarters of it, they were really no match. They were bullied by the Baltimore Ravens, just like they would be by the San Francisco 49ers at this stage. They might be by the Philadelphia Eagles if they continue playing like that. The good teams who can run the ball, who can stop the run, and that's what makes a championship contender, which the Cowboys right now definitely aren't.
I know the Giants have been the Cowboys' punching bag for quite a few years at this point, but I don't know, Ralph, the way that the NFC East has started this season, I'm not taking anything for granted just yet. Like, this feels like it could be a wacky season in that division. So we'll see what the Giants have for the Cowboys. I don't want to make it completely about Dallas. We talked about Derrick Henry, obviously his best day as a Raven. They got the ground game going. But I also, even if it wasn't like his gaudiest day, I thought this was a damn near perfect Lamar Jackson game. He gets the ground game going. He's got 87 yards of his own. He only threw 3 incompletions in this game. That the 3rd and 6th throw to Zay Flowers to basically ice this thing and really put them in control in the final 2 minutes, I thought was just a phenomenal throw. I thought this was a fantastic effort by Lamar Jackson.
Yeah, I think the beauty of Lamar Jackson is he's a quarterback that to have a great day doesn't necessarily need to throw for 350 yards. He can generate the rushing attack. He rushed for I think 87 yards. His presence helped open things up for Derrick Henry because you got to wonder which guy you're going to have to cover on the run that's going in two different directions. And his passing stats make it look game manager-ish, but that just really kind of unfairly diminishes what he did overall. I do think it was close to a perfect game by him. I think he had, a fantastic performance, did everything you'd want him to do on offense. And, really showed that the first two games of the season for the Ravens were kind of fluky. They barely lose to the Chiefs when their receiver on the last play of the game can't get a toe in bounds. They have kind of an off performance, but not terribly off. And they lose on a last second field goal. They probably should have been at least 1-1. They were pretty close to being 2-0. They're still that good, and Lamar Jackson is a big part of that. And the Cowboys really had no answer for him. They didn't get a lot of pressure on him, and obviously they couldn't stop him when he took off on a run.
Do not care a little bit about passing totals when the Ravens were perfect in the red zone. Again, I thought this was, Lamar's had big scramble plays this season, but I thought this was the best he's looked as a designed runner. Thought the Ravens did a phenomenal job with that. Just an excellent game by them. When in doubt, go with the more desperate team. The Ravens, obviously at 0-2, needed this. They stave off falling to 0-3. Doesn't get any easier for Baltimore. It's Buffalo and Cincinnati up next, so can't afford a let up. But even with the Dallas rally, I thought this was a nice effort for Baltimore to bounce back.
Yeah, they looked more like the Baltimore Ravens team that we know. And again, the late comeback, the onside kick, some of that sometimes is fluky. Sometimes it's just what happens in the NFL. When you look at the first three quarters of this game, first 3 quarters plus, they were dominating the Dallas Cowboys, and they do it the way they know how to do it, by running the football and just grinding away a win. And, that's something that the Buffalo Bills certainly can do, which makes that an interesting game next Sunday night. It's the kind of offense that can take the steam out of an offense like the Cincinnati Bengals. So, not an easy road, but if the Ravens are starting to get their groove, if this was their sort of get right game, they're going to be trouble for a lot of teams in the AFC.
If the Dallas Cowboys are a get right game, yeah, that speaks highly of what Baltimore's capable of. Speaking of running the ball, thank you, Ralph, but let's talk with Tom Brady about the most dominant effort in this Cowboys-Ravens game. That would be Derrick Henry, who was Tom's LFG player of the game after rumbling for 151 and 2 touchdowns on Sunday.
Hey, Derrick, congratulations, man. What a performance by you. You're the LFG player of the game, man. I've almost lost my voice watching you tote that thing down the field, 151 yards, 2 touchdowns. You were unbelievable. But before we talk about you, how about that offensive line? How'd they perform up front for you today?
Yeah, they did a great job. I've been challenging all week. I was like, man, just come off the ball and let's get it started early. And I think them guys did a great job. They took that to heart, and they played their ass off today, so I'm very, very proud of them.
Yeah, a lot of questions, I think, for your team starting 0-2. The way you started the game, how important was you getting involved early to the success throughout the first half when you guys were in there at halftime with that huge lead?
Yeah, definitely. We just wanted to get it going. Get the momentum on our side and keep the momentum on our side. And we started doing that early, but as the game went on, it kind of flaked out. So we got to fix that. But I think the biggest thing is just focus on finishing, and I think we'll clean that up this week. But just glad to get a win in this environment, in a great game as well.
Yeah, it feels good to get that first win. Obviously, every season they're all tough to come by, and coming on the road against Dallas and having that backfield mate with you, Lamar, and what he presents in terms of putting the defense in conflict. When I'm watching you two back there, I'm thinking, I don't know who you stop. You got you toting that thing with you getting downhill. It's almost impossible. And then he pulls it, and he's in the open field. What a challenge. Congratulations. I want to see you guys keep doing it all year. And good luck, my man. Looks good for you, doesn't it?
As long as we're talking about the NFC East, let's make one of the biggest games of Sunday's early window the second item on our Sunday 6th. That would be the Philadelphia Eagles eking out a 15-12 win down in New Orleans. They beat the Saints in what I'll call a weird game. It took Philly every minute of 60 to finally get this dub on the road. They snap a 4-game losing streak dating back to last season. And on paper, it doesn't look like it should have been this hard. Philly more than doubled the Saints in total yardage. Big days from Dallas Goedert and Saquon Barkley. Goddard, 10 catches, 170 yards, including a clutch catch and run in the fourth quarter that set the Eagles up for the go-ahead. The rally really started with Saquon Barkley's 65-yard touchdown run late in the game, early fourth quarter. Philly comes back from fourth quarter deficits of 3 and 5 to get this win. And I talked to our guys, Joe Davis and Greg Olsen, about it. Like I said, weird circumstances lead to this. Some of it is turnover luck. Jalen Hurts had 2 of them. Some of it is decision-making. Nick Sirianni was inches away from being questioned all week about fourth down decision-making. Should they have kicked some field goals? Should they have elected a long field goal? But like I talked to with our guys, sometimes when you get the win, it just doesn't matter. Well, fellas, I had a bunch of questions for you about Nick Sirianni's decision-making and did the Eagles blow another chance, but I guess when you score 15 points in the fourth quarter, all that stuff can kind of go on the back burner, huh?
Yeah, man, oh man, that big play from Saquon Barkley gets them going, and then they get the touchdown drive to win it.
Yeah, I mean, the game really came down as simple. The NFL is never simple. But what it boils down to is they played elite defense.
Yep.
And they made 2 plays in the second half.
Right.
Saquon Barkley's long touchdown run, and then the long drag route that Goddard took down to the give or take 5-yard line. That was the game.
Yeah.
I mean, that's how small it is in the NFL. So when all these coaches and people look at them crazy, like, why don't you just take field goals? Field goals get you beat. They want to score touchdowns. He's going to be aggressive. People might not always like it, but it turned out to be enough today.
I'm sure Saints fans would point out that center Eric McCoy went out pretty early in this game, but from an Eagles perspective, it's got to be encouraging to see that defensive front generate this kind of disruption the way they did in this game.
Yeah, that looked like you thought it would coming into the year when you look at the names on that group.
Yeah, they've invested a lot in that defensive line, primarily through the draft. Now Huff this past offseason in free agency. So there's plenty of assets and resources spent on that front. We talked about it early. Playing in big personnel, getting all 5 of those big guys on the field together, both great versus the run, shutting it down for most of the game, and then their ability to generate quick pressures on Derek Carr. That's something we haven't seen coming into today. Really hurt this Saints offense very much, and there's no other way to put it. This Philadelphia defensive line dominated the game.
Yeah. Yep.
Can't count on too much in the NFL, but you can typically count on the Philadelphia Eagles making it interesting at the end. Guys, as always, I appreciate it.
All right, Dave. Thanks, Dave.
Mentioned Dallas Goedert earlier. Philly's tight end has felt like a little bit of an afterthought through 2 weeks. Take it from me. He's on my fantasy team. Not the case in week 3. Like I said, 10 catches for 170 yards. Just his 6th 100-yard game of his career. Easily his biggest game since the 2021 season. What an effort from him. As I was catching up with Greg and Joe, he talked to Pam Oliver down on the field after.
Well, Dallas, some people, I'm not saying me, but some people are going, where's Dallas Goedert? Where's Dallas Goedert? And you showed up big time today.
Yeah, you know, we got an incredible team. We got, a ton of playmakers on this offense. So I'm just going to wait my turn. When I get my opportunity, I'm going to try to make the most of them. And, it took all of us today. Our defense played unbelievable. It feels really good walking out of here with the W.
How is the offense progressing? I talked to Jalen earlier this week, and he feels like you guys are making great strides. What can you be?
Yeah, we got to keep growing. There's a lot of stuff we got to clean up. We turned the ball over way too many times in the first 3 games. We need to clean that up. Foster, good job, baby. And, that's one thing. We got to focus on the details. We can't hurt ourselves, and we got to stay ahead of the sticks because if we do, we got a great running back and great receivers. We just got to make sure we can play ahead of the sticks to continue putting up more points than we did today.
Congratulations to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Okay.
On the surface, you might call this more late-game Eagles BS. Feels like they've gotten so good at pulling these types of games out of the fire. I consider it a very encouraging win for Philly for a couple of reasons. For one, they're beat up. I know that goes around in the NFL, but A.J. Brown once again missed this game. They lose their future Hall of Famer Lane Johnson during this game, as well as Mekhi Becton. So 2 members of that vaunted O-line go out during the game. did not affect Saquon Barkley's ability to rip off yardage. Eagles had more chunk gains on the ground against the Saints on Sunday than New Orleans had allowed in their first 2 weeks combined. So the run game is there. Jalen Hurts once again made some plays with his feet. Very encouraging. Jalen Hurts, even despite turnover issues, the guy had 300 passing yards. The Eagles found a vertical passing game even without A.J. Brown. And of course, like we talked about with Greg, the defensive front finally looking like the very talented unit that it is. Of course, that is why I am not panicking about the New Orleans Saints. Offense came back to earth in a huge, huge way in this game. Just over 200 yards of offense. Really struggled to get anything going other than the late game touchdown drive that ended with a Chris Olave touchdown. But I think the key thing you need to remember there, center Eric McCoy goes out just a handful of snaps into this game, arguably their best offensive lineman, at least one of them. And I think you saw the result of that. I don't think it helped that Taysom Hill wasn't active for this game either. So two big pieces that make the Saints ground game go were not available for most, if not all of this game. So I'm not going to overreact to their struggles until I find out how bad the injury is for McCoy, and hopefully you can get Taysom Hill back as well. We're not going to jump off the Who Dat bandwagon just yet, but a very impressive win by Philly on the road. Like I said, snaps a 4-game road losing streak that dated back to last December. Had not been pretty on the road for Philly, but I think they'll take this one. That Saints loss to Philly is a perfect segue for the next item on our Sunday 6. And that's that 2-0 teams had a tough go of it here in week 3. We talked about it just last week that there were 9 unbeatens in the NFL coming out of the second weekend. Here we are now. We've cut that number in half. Just 4 3-0 teams advance out of this weekend: the Kansas City Chiefs, the Pittsburgh Steelers, the Minnesota Vikings, the Seattle Seahawks. The Buffalo Bills can join them tonight with a win against Jacksonville, but given how these last couple weeks have gone, that's anything but a guarantee. And keep in mind as well, this was a weekend that had several undefeated teams playing each other, so process of elimination, survival of the fittest. But we have cut that number in half. Just a handful of unbeatens left already. And there's nowhere I want to start this better than what happened in Minneapolis between the Vikings and the Houston Texans. Texans are a 2-point road favorite. Vikings are looking feisty. It's not a shock that Minnesota beat Houston. I'll go as far as to call it a shock that they crushed them 34-7. The Vikings looking like an absolute buzzsaw. And if you needed proof that this Minnesota defense is legit, consider this. CJ Stroud, first of all, he threw an interception to Minnesota, breaking his streak of 7 straight games without one. It's the longest active streak by an NFL quarterback. But he also threw a second. 2 picks from CJ Stroud, who is typically so good about ball security. It's only the second multi-interception game of CJ Stroud's career. Nothing going against Brian Flores' defense. He was averaging 5.5 yards per attempt in the middle of this game when the Texans were trying to get off the mat. Just nothing doing. And while Stroud struggled, Sam Darnold did it again. If the Sam Darnold reclamation project was a bit before, we're here, ladies and gents. This is a capital T thing. Sam Darnold in Minnesota's offense with Kevin O'Connell calling the plays looks like a former top 5 pick. He goes for 4 touchdowns on Houston's defense on Sunday afternoon. He's now thrown multiple touchdown passes in 3 consecutive games. Even when he was looking decent in Carolina, this was not a thing. Certainly not a thing during his time as a New York Jet. We've seen Kevin O'Connell get good results out of backup quarterbacks, out of discarded quarterbacks. Maybe it shouldn't have been a surprise that a guy with top 3 overall pick talent can turn in a heck of a performance. Not gaudy yardage totals, but first of all, when your defense is doing that, who needs them? And then, by the way, Aaron Jones picking up exactly where he left off during that tear in Green Bay at the end of last season. 100 yards on the day. Minnesota just looking like a well-oiled machine. And this wasn't just a fluky win again. Maybe you write off a win against the New York Giants, but back-to-back weeks. First, it's the Niners, and then a Texans team that pretty much everybody, myself included, views as a contender, just buzzsawed up at US Bank Stadium. What the Vikings are cooking up, looking awfully impressive. As surprising as it might have been to see the Vikings do that, maybe the most shocking result of the day happened down in Tampa Bay as the 2-0 Buccaneers are that no longer. They get crushed by the Denver Broncos. The Denver Broncos, who looked pretty lost in Bo Nix's first 2 games, go down to Raymond James Stadium and beat Tampa Bay 26-7. Bo Nix looking like he's been there, done that, looking every bit like the first-round pick the Broncos made him back in the spring. And for my money, this Denver defense suffocated the Buccaneers all afternoon. And you kind of heard about it afterwards. Buccaneers players speaking to the media saying, it felt like they wanted it much more than we did. They're punching us in the face. They're doing everything they can to win. I think the Buccaneers just kind of expected the records to speak for themselves and get out of here with an easy win to improve to 3-0. A timely, early reminder, it's never that easy in the NFL. The Broncos, 6.5-point underdogs, and scored on the opening possession, and it just felt like from the very beginning of this game that the Buccaneers were going to be in for a long day at the office. Our guys, Matt Millen and Tim Brando, were on hand at Raymond James, had a chance to catch up to them about a very thorough win for Denver. All right, guys, big first career win for Bo Nix. I want to talk about him in a minute, but am I right in thinking that, the star of this game really felt like this suffocating effort from the Denver defense?
I would agree with that. I definitely think that the defense put a lot of pressure on Baker Mayfield, the kind that really he had not felt. Even against Detroit, when Aiden Hutchinson had the 5 sacks himself, he didn't get the kind of team pressure, Matt, that he got today. He was getting it from every angle from Vance Joseph, the defensive coordinator's defense.
And maybe I'm a little jaded, but to me, that offensive line, it took the game over.
It did.
And so he gave them a lot of time to be able to throw the football, and and at the end of the game, they were able to run frequently. And so that just put more pressure on. You have to score some points. You have to get back into the game. And by that time, in the middle of the third quarter, you could see it. The offensive line had taken the game over.
And the other factor to me, David, that we cannot get rid of is, when you win a tough road game in the National Football League, and that was an emotional cause game. Remember, Tampa Bay lost to Detroit last year. That's the team that knocked them out of the playoffs. It was a game that, from a team standpoint, they put a lot in, and they got out of there with a W. And if you have somewhat of a little sigh of relief in any victory you get in the regular season in this league, sometimes it'll come back to bite you when you're the prohibitive favorite at home the next week.
Yeah, and so I think one of the biggest things there is take care of your business. You always got to take care of your business.
Yep.
Every single week. Every week it's a different game. Every week it's a different team. It's not the same guy you saw the week before. Sometimes you have confidence. Sometimes you don't have confidence. Sometimes there's all kinds of things that happen. The biggest thing is when that ball's kicked off, get ready to punch somebody in the face.
You are so absolutely right. The Bucs were 6.5-point favorites. They wind up losing this game by 19. Real quick before I get y'all out of here, this had to be an encouraging day for Bo Nix. Not just getting the win, but looking very poised, making some plays with his feet. This looked like the guy that the Broncos drafted 12th overall.
Yeah, and decision-making. So his decision-making today was like, he was like a vet. And at one point in the middle of the game, you and I were talking about that, like, He's dropping back. He's going from high to low. He's going across. He's seeing everybody, and the ball's coming out to the open guy. To me, he took a big step today.
Yeah, and not only him. I'm going to throw this out because, I've known the guy a long time. All right, Sean Payton, even though he's got a lot of W's and a Super Bowl title in his hip pocket, he's a competitive guy too. And he doesn't want his players to necessarily hear the noise, but I guarantee he's been on our side of the business too. He knows what's out there. And there were a lot of critics in and around the Denver area about, maybe that West Coast style of offense of his being a bit antiquated.
Yep.
Think again, all right? Because there are different styles of West Coast offenses now versus years ago when it was first installed in San Francisco when you were part of the 49ers.
Well, the West Coast offense is one of those offenses that can adapt to the people you have, and
That's right.
so that's the whole key.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, are you going to call the same things? Sure, they could sound the same. Are they going to look the same? No, because every guy is different. You have to adapt, and it takes time.
Right.
You have to adapt what you do, how you call to the people you have. Really, it's what they're capable of.
Denver's fan base and their media, they're a bit spoiled, a little bit like Dolphins fans and media. They expect it now. They want to see a vertical passing game the way Elway used to do it. Look, it's a different approach, but it's a winning approach, and Peyton feels like he's got the guy from a foundational standpoint that can do for him in Denver what Drew Brees did for him in New Orleans.
That's the goal. I mean, hey, it's one step, but like you said, it looked awfully impressive when everything was clicking for the Broncos today. Guys, thank you so much for the time.
Thank you.
Have a good day.
Let's wrap up this look at 2-0 teams that went down on Sunday with another of those matchups of unbeatens. The LA Chargers at 2-0 went up to Pittsburgh, actually stayed on the East Coast after beating Carolina last week. They fall to the Pittsburgh Steelers 20-10 in a game that moved as quickly and had as few points as we were expecting. Maybe one of the few things on Sunday that went according to script was this game just featuring a hell of a lot of old school football. Steelers in control, really. Obviously, Justin Herbert was questionable with an ankle injury. He wound up re-aggravating it, leaving this game. We'll check on his status for the Chargers game against Kansas City as the week goes along. But meanwhile, is anybody in Pittsburgh apologizing for that? Absolutely not. Justin Fields has won 3 consecutive games for the first time in his NFL career. Can hear the sports talk radio in Chicago percolating about that already. And honestly, it was, I'm not going to call it an ugly game, but it was a game with Fields' first turnover of the season. That had been the talking point as he takes good care of the football. He actually throws his first interception of the season. Ball thrown into traffic, batted up in the air, picked off by the Chargers, doesn't wind up biting them. And I still felt like Fields made great decisions for the most part in this game. Not sure exactly how seriously to take it. A limited Chargers team anyway. Again, Justin Herbert dealing with an injury. But I will say this. We know the Chargers have been running roughshod over everybody they've played this season. Nothing doing against Pittsburgh, just 61 rushing yards, 3 yards per carry on the day. I don't think the level of competition has been as amazing as you would prefer, but this Steelers defense is absolutely incredible, and the level of result speaks to it. Before the Steelers right now, the last team in the league to start 3-0, allowing 10 points or fewer and 300 yards of offense in all 3 of their games, 2004 Seahawks, long time ago. 10 points per game and less than 300 yards per game is incredible. I don't really care who you're playing. The Steelers will face tougher tests, but that is an insane level of defensive production, and I think that's a unit that's going to give the Steelers a chance to win damn near every game they play. And when Justin Fields can hit Calvin Austin for a big catch and run to get you in the end zone, that's really been their only problem to this point. I think it's a pretty nice formula. Maybe not the prettiest one in the league right now, but very effective. Chargers, not going to kill them for falling out of the list of the unbeatens. Frankly, I think it's an accomplishment that they started the season 2-0, but we'll have to keep an eye on Justin Herbert. It is Kansas City next week. It's about to get even more difficult. So whatever questions we have about the Chargers, we will hopefully get them answered sooner rather than later, because it's only going up from here after you start the season with the Raiders and the Panthers. Let's keep things going with the 4th item on our Sunday 6, and that's the wackiest division in the whole damn land. A fun day in the NFC West, because what if I told you the San Francisco 49ers were currently last place in that division? Yeah, it's just week 3. We're not panicking or anything, but it speaks to what we saw Sunday as the LA Rams, I think had the most fun win in the entire NFL for week 3. They rally past the 49ers 27-24 in a game that they led for just the last 2 seconds of regulation. And this is definitely one of those games where you can just reel off stats and last time milestones. So just bear with me. Prior to Sunday, the San Francisco 49ers under Kyle Shanahan, when up by 14 or more points in the second half, we're 50-0. 50-1 now. Before today, the LA Rams had lost 101 straight games when down by 14 or more points at any point in the second half. Last time they overcame an obstacle like that was all the way back in 2006 when Mark Bulger, Steven Jackson, and even Isaac Bruce was still doing his thing. It's been a long time since we've seen a finish like this from either of these teams. The Niners, this looked like it was just over. This game looked like, you just got one eye on it in the quad box. Like, oh, yep, there go the Niners up by 14 points again. Okay, they're up by 10, but it's the fourth quarter. Yeah, division win. Harder than it looks, but they're going to beat this depleted Rams team. Jawan Jennings goes off for 175 yards and 3 touchdowns. Brock Purdy, for all the absences, George Kittle doesn't play in this game. We know Deebo Samuel didn't play in this game. Christian McCaffrey's on injured reserve. Brock Purdy still goes for 292 and 3 touchdowns. Everything about this suggested at least a good enough San Francisco win, if not a dominant one. And you're like, hey, it's the NFL. It's harder to win than it looks, even if the Rams do have half their team on IR. And then everything changed. The last 6 minutes of this game were a roller coaster ride. And I wanted to talk to our guys who were on the call about it. My friends, Adam Amin and Mark Sanchez, had a front row seat to take me through the wildness of the end of Rams 49ers. All right, guys, I'm sorry if I'm putting you on the spot because I'm still trying to figure this out myself, but this game kind of felt like it was heading toward a foregone conclusion right up until the last 6 or so minutes. Niners miss a field goal and all hell kind of breaks loose. I mean, what flipped for the LA Rams in those final minutes?
I mean, you have Matthew Stafford at quarterback. That certainly helps. They got a key special teams play. I think the theme for L.A. really the whole season since Puka Nacua got that injury against Detroit in the opening game has been next man has to step up. I know it's a cliche in football, but different players from different portions of the game were able to step up and make big plays for L.A.
Another cliche, but all hands on deck effort, and that's exactly what it was, led by number 9, Matthew Stafford. I thought the Niners just kind of lost steam as the game went on. Jennings kept them in this thing, had a career day, and then the drop at the end by Bell, the miss by Moody, and what does Stafford do? He scores on his last 4 possessions on offense, touchdown, field goal, and that was the story of the game. But you can't credit Matthew Stafford and Sean McVay enough. It's one thing to say, hey, we're all about our competitive spirit. We're all in on this game. It's another thing to do it without that many players being so short personnel. That was incredible.
45th career game-winning drive engineered by Stafford, number 1 among active quarterbacks.
It's the beauty of the NFL because I don't know how many non-diehard Rams fans saw this one going the Rams' way today. Great win for them. Not to take credit away from the Rams, I'm sure the Niners can point to a lot of reasons, a lot of absences that didn't work in their favor, but how do they keep this from kind of snowballing? It just feels like such a demoralizing loss.
Feels like cleanup, right?
Yeah, they just got to – it's small things here and there, and nothing wrong with sticking to that run game even later in the game. Don't completely abandon it. I mean, Brock Purdy showed you what he's all about as well. Don't think he's not just as competitive as some of those guys on the Rams. He can get you a long way. That run game can get you a long way. They still have plenty in the tank. By no means is this thing over for San Francisco. They're going to be a problem down the road for teams. But it's really trying to just flush this thing in a 24-hour period, get ready to go, strap it up again, and go.
Easily one of the best finishes of this young season. Adam and Mark, I appreciate the time, guys. Thanks.
Thanks, Dave.
Thank you.
I can't get enough about the little things that lead to crazy wins like this. In the instance of the Rams, special teams looming large, as Adam and Mark alluded to. Number 1, Shout out to undrafted rookie Xavier Smith for the 38-yard punt return at the end of regulation. Took the ball, his first real NFL touch, takes the ball on his own 12-yard line and gets it to midfield, which gives the Rams all the time and real estate they need to set up a game-winning field goal. And who hits that field goal? Rookie kicker Josh Carty. So after all of that striving, trying, uncertainty, 2 rookies in the special teams game help you get over the finish line, help Matthew Stafford pull together a comeback that I will remember for a long time. Such a fun finish for the LA Rams. Not as much fun for another NFC West team. That would be the Arizona Cardinals. They fall 20-13 to the Detroit Lions out in the desert in a game that I had sky-high hopes and expectations for this being one of the games of the day. I thought this would be our Rams-Niners game, and it looked that way through the start. First 3 possessions of this game led to 3 touchdowns. Looked like we were headed for an easy over and a lot of fun in the process, but it just came to a screeching halt. The adjustments by these coaching staffs must have been amazing, because after 3 straight touchdowns to open the game, only 3 of the next 19 combined possessions between the Cardinals and Lions led to any kind of points at all. Only 1 field goal scored between these 2 teams in the second half. Lions scored all of their points in the first half. Cardinals couldn't get much of anything going at all after those first 15, 20 minutes of the game. I'm sure Cardinals fans would want me to point out, looked like they had a pick 6 of Jared Goff, blown dead. Refs ruled that the 2-minute warning of the first half hit right before Goff got hit on the throw, led to a pick 6 by Mac Wilson, wiped off the board. That is a meaningful moment, especially because Jahmyr Gibbs scored just a handful of plays later. As much as that might suck if you're a Cardinals fan, I would just like to point out the Detroit Lions, 43 carries, second highest total in the league for 187 yards. I think I'm getting the Lions MO here, and that's with that line and those 2 running backs. If you can't bow up against the run, they're going to do their absolute damnedest to maul you in the run game. I feel like that was the difference in the second half as the Lions just kind of grinded out. Grounded out works too, considering 187 rushing yards in a 20-13 win. Works for the Lions. Not as much fun as we were expecting. Plenty of fun to be had in Seattle, though, where we wrap up our look at the NFC West with the Seahawks, who are alone in first place at 3-0, just like everybody predicted a few weeks ago. They romp over the Miami Dolphins by a score of 24-3. I'm not sure how much you glean from this in the big picture. The Dolphins clearly very shorthanded at quarterback. Skylar Thompson struggled replacing Tua Tagovailoa. Tim Boyle, his replacement, struggled as well. Dolphins already obviously dealing with injury there with Tua on injured reserve. Looks like Skylar Thompson's dealing with something as well. So we'll see how Mike McDaniel moves forward from here. But this is about as bad as it can look in the Mike McDaniel era. 205 yards of offense, obviously just a field goal. It's the third worst yardage total in the league for week 3, and it's the worst yardage total of Mike McDaniel's tenure. So even though we know that Tua's missed time before, they've had to start other quarterbacks on several occasions, it's never quite looked this rough. But credit to Mike McDonald. That's why he's there, right? We're bringing back the Legion. We're revamping this Seattle defense. And boy, they looked the part. 6 sacks on the day. They got after it. They shut down the Dolphins running game. 3 points. You'll take that every single time. And I just like to say, not the prettiest day. Geno Smith does throw 2 interceptions in this game. Seahawks went through a bit of a slump before halftime where they couldn't keep things going. But Geno Smith, 3rd in yardage total in the NFL through 3 weeks, completing 74% of his passes. Clean up some of those turnovers. Seattle's offense, I think, has a ton of potential. I think Geno Smith is quietly playing some very good football. Seattle Seahawks sitting at 3-0. I don't think anybody in the Pacific Northwest is complaining about that. 5th item on our Sunday 6 is Victory Unlocked. It's brought to you by Zillow. Agents, tours, loans, homes. You want to talk about unlocked? Let's talk about the job that Matt LaFleur and the Green Bay Packers have done with Malik Willis. They go down to Nashville, hammer the Tennessee Titans 30-14 to improve to 2-1. And look, it's early in the season to be saying this. I debated saying it. A lot of football left to be played. But after 3 games, I'm going to start stumping for Matt LaFleur as NFL Coach of the Year. That's how impressed I am with the job that the Green Bay Packers have done. This is a personal preference, but typically when an NFL team loses its starter, I'm going to wait and see before I just assume that everything's going to be okay. Because the drop-off from starting quarterback like Jordan Love to anybody, let alone Malik Willis, who's gotten so few live reps in this league, it's a big gap. I mean, look at the Miami Dolphins in Seattle on Sunday, struggling to get anything going without Tua Tagovailoa. Safe to say it hasn't been the case for the Green Bay Packers. Malik Willis, he was fine in week 2 against Indianapolis. He didn't get in the way. He didn't make any boneheaded mistakes. He was driving the damn bus in Nashville as the Packers beat down the Titans. 13 of 19 for 202 yards and a touchdown through the air, 73 yards on the ground, couple huge conversions, rushes for the opening touchdown of the game. And the thing that stood out to me, we know the guy's an amazing athlete. We know he can pick up yards on the ground, but Malik Willis was dealing from the pocket, people. Big third down conversions, 3rd and 14, 3rd and 18, like downs and distances that aren't favorable for any quarterback, let alone a backup. And he's just zipping darts to Green Bay receivers, picking up 3rd downs, moving the chains. Green Bay, a very respectable 5 of 14 on 3rd down. Just phenomenal effort from the guy. And remember, he was not a Green Bay Packer a month ago. He was a Tennessee Titan. They traded for him at the end of the preseason, late, conditional 3rd round, day 3 pick, just kind of an afterthought. Oh, we might need somebody to back up Jordan Love. And Matt LaFleur has the guy playing at an incredibly high level, and no less against the team that traded him away. Had to be a phenomenal day for Malik Willis. He caught up with us after the game.
Malik Willis, 73 yards on the ground. I think that doesn't surprise us, but 13 of 19 for over 200 yards. And Matt LaFleur told me at halftime, the whole reason we're able to open this up is credit to my quarterback. How much more comfortable did you feel out there?
I just got to give all the praise, honor, and glory to God, bro, for giving me another op. Like I say, getting to play this game at this level is nothing more than a blessing. And just him put me in a position where I could, have the help and continue to just work hard and see my way through this thing, taking it day by day. I think it's amazing. Just the staff they have put together and the guys in that locker room who help me each day in and day out. And I think it's just been awesome, this process and going through it.
Let's stay right there. Let's inspire some people today, because you told me you've been counted out your whole playing career, from high school to college, being ranked 123 out of 130, being shipped out of Tennessee, and you kept saying, I just needed an opportunity. For everybody waiting for their opportunity, when they look at you right now, the best piece of advice you give that got you from those tough times to right now, and how good this feels.
Just keep working hard and keep God first at that. And it's very simple. I mean, it's hard to do more than anything. Just staying focused on what you want to accomplish and the things that you feel like you deserve. And it's not about that. It's about taking advantage of each day and working hard. And then when the opportunity arises, then you're confident and you're able to go and do what you need to do. And I feel like that's the most important thing, just staying down on the grind, and not to be cliche, but just really just getting in on those details and understanding that it'll all come to fruition when it's supposed to, if they're supposed to.
One word, how good does this feel?
That feels amazing. Yeah.
Thank you. Congratulations. Great game.
Yep.
I don't doubt what Malik Willis said, that it's hard to stay focused on the moment, but the guy is seizing this opportunity. It has looked incredibly impressive. And I love what he said heading into this game, which is that, hey, there's no bad blood between me and the Titans. They shipped me off, sure, but he said, they gave me my opportunity in this league, and I got paid the whole time I was there, which love that perspective. But like you said, it's got to feel amazing to go down and face the team that shipped you away for a bag of potato chips, not just win, but be a catalyst in this win. Incredibly impressive performance. It's a testament to him and the work that he's put in. Like I said, I think, it's funny to think we used to debate about whether or not Matt LaFleur was a good coach. He had a 4-time MVP in Aaron Rodgers. Is it the coach? Is it the player? Well, I think it's safe to say Matt LaFleur is a hell of a coach, and the Packers haven't just survived this stretch without Jordan Love. He could be back as early as next week. We'll see. He warmed up before week 3 against Tennessee. They play Minnesota at home. Lambeau will be rocking. Wouldn't be a shock to see Jordan Love return in that game, but he doesn't have to. Not only because the Packers have bought themselves the luxury of time, but because Malik Willis is a viable option at this point. This is not a situation that you should be desperate to get away from. It's incredibly impressive. You mix it with an opportunistic Packer defense. I didn't even talk about them, but turned Will Levis over what felt like half a dozen times. Titans had 3 turnovers on the day. A pick 6 from Jair Alexander basically, for my money, ended the competitive portion of this thing. Like, Will Levis has shown flashes through 3 weeks, but you go down 17-7 with Will Levis's penchant for risky plays. It just doesn't feel likely that you're coming back. And the Packers just kind of teed off from there. 8 sacks in addition to the 3 takeaways. So got a little bit of spice on defense. Looks like that D coordinator change is paying off. And your head coach can coach the hell out of a quarterback who just got the playbook 4 weeks ago. Can't say enough about how impressed I am. Whether they bring Jordan Love back or whether the Malik Willis train keeps rolling, I'm excited to see what's next for the Green Bay Packers either way. Let's wrap up this Sunday 6 with our final item on the agenda. We're going to call it Painting the Town Red. 2 more big things you need to know. They both prominently feature the color red. Bear with me. You'll see where I'm going here. Let's start in Atlanta, where Big Red and the Kansas City Chiefs get a big road win. They escaped the Atlanta Falcons 22-17 on a huge 4th down stop by Nick Bolton down near the red zone. Looked like Kirk Cousins is going to do it again. 4th quarter Kirk magic, just like there was in Philly the other night. And Nick Bolton just knifes through the backfield to tackle Bijan Robinson well short of the sticks. Don't love the play call by Atlanta, but I love the execution by this Kansas City defense even more. And see if you've heard this before. See if this sounds at all familiar to you. Chiefs offense is still finding its way. Patrick Mahomes with a couple misfires, couple plays he'd like to have back, including an interception. Miscommunications with his receivers. Xavier Worthy stopped short on a route that might have ended the game. A big 3rd and 2, just cut his route off, led to a big incompletion by the Chiefs that gave the Falcons life. The run game is hit or miss. Remember, Isaiah Pacheco is out. Carson Steele steps in and solid, maybe not spectacular, but solid. Does any of this matter? Absolutely not, because for the 3rd time in as many weeks, the Chiefs defense, it's the driving force of this team. It was the case for a lot of last year, including the playoff run. It's the case right now. Patrick Mahomes is always going to be an ace up your sleeve, but this Chiefs defense is disgusting. Held Atlanta to a field goal after halftime, buckled down near the goal line once. Yes, maybe they got away with a little bit of a DPI, but those are the breaks. And then when the Falcons came right back a few minutes later, they were there to stop them on 4th down. This team is playing phenomenal defense. They sacked Kirk Cousins twice. They pressured him all night. Guys that's still recovering from that Achilles tear, not overly comfortable on the move. And Steve Spagnuolo seemed like he was aware of that. Kirk Cousins, up until that final possession, looked very uncomfortable. Credit to him for the way that he's rallied in the 4th quarter of 2 consecutive games. I feel really good about where the Falcons are in general, but you got to catch a lot of breaks and play your absolute best to get the better of the Chiefs when everything's cooking for them, particularly on defense. I can't say enough about this unit. Can't say I'm surprised. Can't say it's overly shocking to see them at 3-0, but they just find ways to get the job done. This is just the latest example. We got a toenail against Baltimore. We got the DPI and a 51-yard field goal to win by a point in week 2. And now you're fending off the opposition at the death on 4th down on the 13-yard line. Yeah, this is just what the Chiefs do. And now, without further ado, let's wrap it up with our other red result, and that's the big one from the Red Rifle. I did not think we would be seriously featuring the Carolina Panthers in the Sunday Six, but that was before Andy Dalton showed us that the Carolina Panthers are, in fact, a viable football team. I'm not sure it changes the landscape of the league, but this was a team that we felt comfortable writing off as a double-digit loss from here to January with Bryce Young as the starter. And I don't say that to pick on him, but the results bear this out. Bryce Young's last 11 games starting for Carolina, he threw 3 touchdowns. He gets benched last week. Andy Dalton steps in against the Raiders, and in one half, he throws 3 touchdowns, bombs away for the Red Rifle like he never left. 319 passing yards on the day and 36 points for the Panthers, which 2 games still to play, 2 Monday night games, but that is the highest point total in the NFL. Just a week after this looked like the most hopeless roster in the league, 36-22 over the Raiders. A game that was so bad that it caused Raiders head coach Antonio Pierce to say that some of his players were making business decisions. So now looking at the Raiders like it's a 5-alarm fire. It's so wonderful how quickly things flip in the NFL. Raiders beat Baltimore last week. Everything looks amazing. Maybe this team's better than we're giving them credit for. Panthers, hopeless, hapless, don't know what to do with their quarterback. Here we are coming out of week 3. Panthers, surprisingly decent. Raiders, we're gonna see where this goes. Antonio Pierce sounded like a very unhappy man in the wake of this game, but it feels big to me that at least the Panthers are participating in the NFL season. This isn't a team that you can write off without even looking at matchups, without even considering any of the variables. Deontay Johnson, traded from the Steelers in the offseason, highest yardage output of his career in his first game with Andy Dalton, 122 yards. Chuba Hubbard went off for 159 all-purpose. There's some talent on this Carolina roster. They spent the offseason upgrading things to make life easier on Bryce Young. Unfortunately, that did not pan out, but it is nice to see a quarterback give those guys an opportunity to shine and do their thing. Looking forward to seeing how the Panthers follow it up. Doesn't get any easier, so we'll see how Dalton follows it up, but I'm guessing he's going to be motivated in week 4. Carolina hosts the Cincinnati Bengals next week, so it's the Red Rifle against his own team. It's almost like the scriptwriters saw this coming. The NFL, it's the best reality TV there is. I can't get enough of it. Hopefully neither can you, and fortunately, you won't have to. We got plenty more coming your way. It is a Monday night doubleheader, so we will be back in your feed tomorrow. Got reaction from both games, Bills versus Jags, as well as Bengals versus Commanders. We're going to check in with our guy, Jay Glazer. We got the goods for you. We got you taken care of. If you're not, don't miss that. Subscribe to the show on Spotify. Go find us on Apple Podcasts, wherever you prefer to get your pods. You can find us there. You can give us a follow on any of the socials at NFL on Fox Pod. So much more coming your way. Monday Night Football doubleheader, as if there wasn't enough to talk about already. We'll have it for you soon. Until then, I appreciate it, and I'll talk to y'all next time.